you want us to wait?
Give him 10 seconds. If you don't see Jim, bust that joint open and find him.
Ready, entry team. We going.
Go! Go!
Welcome to Mr. 2 Reviews. What you just saw was a short clip from the Season 2 finale of the TV show Gotham. In it, you briefly see a watch worn by Detective Bullock that just so happens to be the watch that I'm going to review today. The watch in question is Citizen Eco-Drive BM8180-03E solar-powered Army field watch. I bought this watch with my own funds on Amazon about 10 years ago, and the opinions in this video are my own. This video is not sponsored or endorsed by anyone, but I will leave links to other products you see in the description below. So first, I want to start off by talking about why I bought this watch and what I was looking for. There was a time in the early to mid-2000s where I did not wear a watch. Since I carried a cell phone everywhere, I just relied on it to tell me the time. Back then, cell phones had good standby times going about several days up to a week, depending on usage, before needing to be recharged. But once I got my first smartphone in the iPhone 3GS, I had to charge the phone every day and realized it wasn't a reliable way to tell me the time. So I decided to get a watch in part to extend the battery life of my smartphone. So what I wanted in a watch was something I could wear casually every day, require little to no maintenance, was durable, reliable, affordable, and of course, look good. After searching around and reading reviews, I figured out that the type of watch I wanted was a field watch. Field watches have a long history with the Army and had specific design requirements including but not limited to being durable, reliable, and easy to read in low light conditions, and their relatively simple analog look suited my style. Next, I had to decide if I wanted an automatic watch or a solar-powered watch. Your regular run-of-the-mill battery-powered watch was out of the question as they only last 1 to 2 years before needing a battery change, depending on how old the battery was when you got it. In the end, I decided against automatic watches because they required too much maintenance, whether it be by winding it or getting it serviced every 5 years, which is what most watch enthusiasts recommend. And their durability was questionable with so many moving parts. And their accuracy was also questionable, at least with my experience with this replica automatic. Granted, it's a relatively cheap replica, but I was getting plus or minus 2 minutes a day. If I wound it tight, it would go fast. If it was nearing the end of the spring, it would go slow. Fortunately, I only wear this watch for formal events or business settings, so everything was really secondary to its look. That's not to say all automatic watches are not accurate. Take the Citizen Automatic for example. It's unofficially said to be the most accurate watch ever made, with its A660 movement claiming a rating of plus or minus 5 seconds a year, but it also costs several $1,000s. In my opinion, every guy should own at least 2 watches, a casual watch and a formal watch. 3 if you live an active lifestyle and require a utility watch that does more than just tell the time, like fitness watches, smartwatches, or this Timex Expedition WS4, which has a compass, barometer, altimeter, and thermometer sensors. As you can see, the battery is dead. It lasted about 2 years, but in this case, I was willing to compromise because it had so many other functions. I wore it when I summited Mount Baldy in Los Angeles County. I calibrated it that day from a known altitude, then checked my watch again at the summit, and it was off about minus 500 feet, which is about a 5% error. Not very accurate, but better than just guessing your elevation. I may do a separate review of this watch in the future. And lastly, this watch was given to me as a birthday gift about 15 years ago. It's also a solar-powered watch, and as you can see, it's still working. This is the Casio G-Shock Mtg 900. What I like about this watch is that it's truly a zero-maintenance watch. The time sets automatically using radio signals, and there's even a mode that automatically adjusts for daylight savings time. But it's big and heavy for my 6.5-inch wrist, so I haven't worn it very often. I prefer something smaller, lighter, and slimmer. Like this Eco-Drive. I believe this model debuted in 2002. It's also made by Citizen, a Japanese company who's been around since 1918, so this year marks their 100th anniversary. It has a case diameter of 37.2 millimeters and a thickness of 9.5 millimeters. It uses 18 millimeter wide bands, and this watch weighs with the band about 1.69 ounces or 48 grams. Compare that with the Casio, which weighs 4.33 ounces or 123 grams, according to my scale. The only thing you have to adjust is the date for every month that does not have 31 days. For example, on March 1st, your watch will say it's the 29th if it's not a leap year, so you'll have to adjust it about every other month. You know the knuckle trick? All the months that land on a knuckle have 31 days. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. I didn't really care for the band it came with. It reminds me of Converse shoes, but I kept it for the first few months I had this watch until it started getting smelly. And the smell would not go away no matter how I washed it. Over the years, I went through several bands before I finally settled on this one, which is a NATO-style nylon band. It's really comfortable, light, durable, and long-lasting. I've had this band for the longest at almost 5 years now, and it's still got a lot of life left in it. It does start to get smelly every few months, but it's easy to clean. I just let it soak in the bathroom sink in a light bleach solution and leave it out to dry overnight, and it's smell-free for another few months. Another great thing about the NATO style band is that it's one piece and it goes through both spring bars, so if one of the spring bars were to break, the band would still keep the watch on your wrist. If it was a normal two-piece band and the spring bar were to break, the entire watch would fall off your wrist with the risk of losing your watch forever. The only drawback with the NATO style band is that you may not want to use it on really nice watches, as it will scratch up the case back really bad. As you can see, it has a black dial, and blending in almost seamlessly is a solar panel, which is almost impossible to see except in direct sunlight. What I love most about this watch is that it features a rechargeable battery that I had never heard of before. Rather than most rechargeable batteries, which are nickel metal hydride, nickel cadmium, or some form of lithium ion, this watch uses a manganese titanium lithium battery. They don't seem to advertise that anymore, so I don't know if they're still using that type of battery, but right now on their company website, I was surprised to see that they actually say that you never need to change the battery. Unless they're using a new secret battery type, I'm pretty sure at some point somebody is going to have to change the battery, assuming after 80 years that the solar cell is even capable of charging the battery. It's technically still a lithium battery, but it uses different metals for its cathodes. I'm no battery expert, so I don't know exactly what these formulations mean, but I assume it has something to do with watches requiring very little electrical output to power the watch, and for longevity. Searching around the forums, a buyer commented that he got in touch with a Citizen representative and asked how long the battery will last, and they said the average user can expect to get at least 40 years out of their watch. With a fresh and fully charged battery, this watch can stay in a dark drawer for up to 6 months before going completely dead. After 20 years, this watch is supposed to be able to retain 80% of its total capacity, so would still have a reserve time fully charged at almost 5 months. So we're losing about 1% capacity per year. You also have to keep in mind that in general, solar cells also lose their efficiency at about 1% per year. I couldn't find anywhere what kind of solar cell this watch uses, unfortunately, but I suspect this watch will last much longer than 40 years until it gets to a point where the battery reserve is no longer able to keep it going beyond the night, at which point I would probably just buy a new watch. That is, if I'm still alive. I'm in my 30s, and even if this watch only lasts 40 years, I'll be pretty old by then. We'll all probably be half robots by then anyway, so the necessity of a watch will probably be moot. We'll have like heads-up displays in our eyeballs or something. But I would still regard 40 years a lifetime of use and consider my money well spent. As a low battery indicator, the second hand will begin to tick in 2-second increments, which I have not seen my watch do yet. I've worn this watch as my everyday watch for about 10 years, only taking it off for showers, doing dishes, or the few days out of the year where I wear my formal or utility watch. I've even taken this watch in swimming pools and the ocean and never saw any moisture get trapped inside the watch. Citizen does recommend changing out the gasket every few years, but I haven't taken the time to do that and probably won't ever do it unless the need for it becomes apparent. The watch is rated to 100 meters or 330 feet underwater, but it's not rated for diving as it's not a diving watch. They also claim to use special lubricants that won't harden or evaporate for at least 20 years. This watch features Citizen's E101 movement. It should say what movement it has on the case back, but I have so many scratches from the NATO strap that I can hardly make it out, and the camera probably won't pick up any of it at all. According to the specs, this watch is accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month, which I think is plenty accurate and in line with my experience with the watch. That's about half a second off each day, which I think is perfectly acceptable. Since I currently live in Korea where they don't use daylight savings time, I hardly ever have to adjust the time, just the date every other month. If I was to go back to the States, I would have to adjust it twice a year for daylight savings time. To adjust the time, you simply pull the crown out all the way. To adjust the day or date, you push the crown in about halfway. You should feel a clear detent. Turning clockwise changes the day, counterclockwise changes the date. And once you're done, you just push the crown back in all the way. The instructions do say not to adjust the settings between a certain time, mostly during the middle of the night, but I think I broke that rule several times without realizing it, and luckily I haven't experienced any problems. That is something you might want to be careful about if you want this watch to last a long time. If you look at the stainless steel bezel, you can see that it's polished on the sides, but it has a matte finish on top. If you're in the army, you want a matte finish so bad guys don't have something shiny to shoot at, but admittedly, the watch would look much nicer if it was all polished. I prefer the matte finish, but I've seen a YouTuber use a Dremel and a polishing tip to polish the watch and it did look really nice. My watch has gotten a few scratches over the years, but I think it just gives it more character. It also features a mineral crystal glass face. You might notice some scratches which I got early on, but I'm frankly surprised it looks as good as it does for being 10 years old. A sapphire crystal is really the only higher tier option, but I think mineral glass is plenty effective and easier on the wallet. I really like the red second hand. It makes a nice contrast off the black dial so you can easily read the seconds, and the luminescent tip also allows you to easily read the seconds at night, which I'll show in a bit. My biggest complaint when I first got the watch was how the second hand didn't line up exactly with each tick mark. Sometimes it's more apparent than others, but this is something I just had to get over, and after a while I just stopped caring about it. I accepted that this was just my everyday beater watch, so I learned to love it for what it was. I also don't like how fat the minute and hour hands are. I prefer something straighter and slimmer like on the Seiko Automatic SNZ G09JC model, but again, this is something I can live with. By the way, this Seiko Automatic was my runner-up when I was shopping for a watch. I also wasn't sure if I wanted a black background for my day and date indicator, as is with the Seiko SNZ G15J1, but I'm happy with the white background. I'll leave Amazon links to all these in the description below. Seiko also makes a solar powered watch, and I may buy it if my current watch ever fails, and it's the SNE 095P2 model. I may want to add a Seiko Automatic to my collection one day, but we'll see. Now let's take a closer look at the looms. You'll notice a generous amount of looms applied on the hands, so they're also very easy to read in complete darkness. If you are wearing long sleeves or a jacket as you would in cold weather, and the watch didn't get a chance to charge the looms, you can still read it easily in low light conditions, as the polished edges on the minute and hour hand will pick the light right up. Now let's take a look at it in the dark. I shot this previously, but you'll notice immediately how blue the looms are compared to most other watches, and that makes this watch unique. I love the triangle at the top because it lets you know at a glance where the 12 o'clock position is. Notice how sharp those corners are. Sometimes the looms on other watches are just sort of globbed on there, but not so with this watch. It has nice, sharp corners and crisp lines. You can clearly tell which is the second hand, minute hand, and hour hand. With the exception of the numbers 12 and 3, you can clearly read the numbers and the hour marks. I often wake up in the middle of the night, and with my eyes adjusted to the dark, I was still able to read the time at 3 and 4 in the morning, just from the looms. The looms on this watch make it very impressive for its price point. Even nicer, more expensive watches don't have looms of this quality. And that just about wraps up my review, but if there's something I missed, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like if you found any of this info helpful. Coming up next on Mr. Drew Reviews, I'm going to do a series on Korean rations, so if that's something you might be interested in, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.